Hit the ground hard. Metal screamed against rock as the craft tore through the desert surface, carving a deep scar in the orange sand. Lieutenant Jake held tight to his seat restraints as the world spun around him. When everything finally stopped moving, he tasted blood in his mouth and felt the sharp sting of a cut above his eye. Filled the cabin. Jake released his restraints and dropped to the tilted floor. His hands moved on instinct, checking the emergency systems. Nothing worked. The main power was dead. Life support was offline. The communication array had been ripped away during the crash. He grabbed the emergency pack from the wall compartment and kicked open the damaged door. Hit him like a physical blow. Jake stumbled out onto the sand and fell to his knees. The twin suns have burned overhead, turning the desert into an oven. He pulled himself up and looked around. Sand dunes stretched in every direction, rolling hills of orange and red that seemed to go on forever. No landmarks, no signs of civilization, just endless desert under a pale pulse. Checked his survival suit. The temperature regulator was damaged, working at maybe 30% coyote. He opened the emergency pack, one water container designed to last 3 days under normal conditions. In this heat, with his suit failing, he would be lucky if it lasted 1 day. The locator beacon was broken. No one knew exactly where he had crashed. Started walking. There was no other choice. The shuttle had been heading toward a human research outpost when the sandstorm hit. If he kept moving in what he thought was the right direction, he might reach it. Might. The word felt hollow in his mind. His day passed in a blur of heat and pain. Jake rationed his water carefully, taking small sips every hour. His lips cracked. His tongue felt thick in his mouth. The suit's failing systems meant he was sweating constantly, losing water faster than he could plate it. By nightfall, he had covered maybe 20 kilometers. The emergency pack said the outpost was at least 8 kilometers from his last known position. Temperature dropped sharply after dark. Jake huddled behind a rock formation, shivering despite the insulated suit. He allowed himself 3 sips of water. The container was already half empty. He tried not to think about what would happen when it ran out. Day was worse. The suns rose and the heat returned with crying force. Jake's steps became unsteady. His vision blurred at the edges. He knew the signs of severe dehydration, confusion, weakness, the feeling that his body was shutting down piece by piece. He fell twice before noon. The second time, it took him 10 minutes to stand up again. For noon, his water was gone. Jake shook the container, hoping for one more drop, but it was empty. He threw it aside and kept walking. What else could he do? Sitting down meant death. At least moving gave him something to focus on besides the burning thirst. Things that were not there, buildings shimmering in the distance, trees that vanished when he got close. Once he thought he saw another shuttle landing nearby, but when he ran toward it, there was only sand. His mind was playing tricks on him. He knew it, but could not stop. Collapsed near sunset. He tried to get up, but his legs would not work. This is it, he thought. This is where I die, alone on an alien world, killed by something as simple as thirst. He closed his eyes and waited. Out of movement brought him back. Jake forced his eyes open and saw a shape prowling across the sand. For a moment, he thought it was another hallucination. Then the shape became clear. It was real. Walking toward him stood on 4 legs, each ending in broad feet adapted for sand. Its body was covered in a hard, segmented shell that gleamed dark green in the fatting light. 2 main arms extended from its thorax, along with several smaller manipulator limbs. A wedge-shaped head featured large, multifaceted eyes and delicate antennae. The being was pulling a small cargo sled loaded with sealed content. Jake had seen pictures of them during his diplomatic training, but had never met one in person. This was their world. They were adapted to survive here in ways humans were not. Several meters away, antennae twitching. It studied Jake with those alien eyes. Then it reached into the cargo sled and pulled out one of the containers. It approached slowly, carefully, as if afraid of startling him. Tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. Only a rough croak came out. They made a series of clicking sounds, then touched a device on its harness. A mechanical voice spoke in accented but clear English. "We're dying from water loss." Managed a weak nod. It clicked again, looking at its cargo sled, then back at Jake. It seemed to be thinking. Finally, it made a decision. It opened the container it was holding and moved closer. "Drink," the mechanical voice said. Reached for the container with shaking hands. That helped him lift it to his lips. Water, cool and clean, flowed into his mouth. Jake drank desperately, too fast, choking. It pulled the container back, clicked something that the translator rendered as gentle warning sounds, then let him drink again more slowly. Water was life itself. Jake felt it spreading through his body, pushing back the darkness that had been closing in. He drank half the container before they took it away. Or Jake whispered. At the container, then at its cargo sled. It made a series of complex clicks that the translator struggled to render. "This water is for my family, my village. Our wells have failed. This is the last shipment I could buy. Without it, they will..." His mind, clearing slightly with the water, understood what this meant. He tried to push the container away. "No, you need it. Your people need it." Click firmly. "You need it now. You will die before morning without more water." It tilted the container to Jake's lips again. "No being should die of thirst when another can prevent it. This is our way." Drank. They gave him the entire container, then helped him move to a sheltered spot between 2 large rocks. It pulled a small device from its harness and pressed buttons. The device beeped and displayed a holographic map. "An outpost is here," the mechanical voice said, indicating a point on the map. 28 kilometers northeast. I have sent your location coordinates to this device. When you are stronger, follow these directions." Placed the device in Jake's hand. It also left the empty container and 2 nutrient bars from its supplies. Then it stood and returned to its cargo sled. Jake called out, his voice stronger now. "What is your name?" Paused. "I am called..." "Jake, thank you. I owe you my life." Tay moved in a pattern Jake could not interpret. "There is no debt between those who help each other survive. Safe journey, Jake." Its cargo sled and walked into the darkening desert. Jake watched until the shape disappeared over a dune. He looked at the empty container in his hands, then at the direction it had gone. The being had given him enough water to survive, but had kept barely enough for itself to reach the next settlement, and its village was still waiting for water that might now never arrive. Forced himself to stand. The human outpost was 28 kilometers away. He had coordinates now. He had a chance, because a stranger had made an improbable choice. Started walking northeast, each step feeling stronger than the last. Behind him, somewhere in the rescue team found Jake 30 hours after his shuttle crashed. He was delirious and badly dehydrated despite the water it had given him, but he was alive. They loaded him onto a medical transport and rushed him to the human research outpost. The doctor said another 6 hours in that desert would have. Spent 3 days in medical care. When he could finally speak clearly, he told them everything about the who had saved his life. He described in detail and explained about the water, the cargo sled, the dying village. The base commander listened carefully and promised to file a proper report with Earth Diplomatic Command. "Should find her," Jake said from his hospital bed. "Send a rescue team. She gave me so much water that she might not have enough to make it home." Commander looked uncomfortable. "Lieutenant is a big plant, mostly dead. We don't have the resources to search for every troll. I'm sorry, but our mission here is research, not rescue operations for the local population." Wanted to argue, but he was too weak. He fell asleep angry and woke up feeling worse. As soon as the doctors cleared him for light duty, he started researching. The outpost had a small but functional database on civilization and the current state of their world. Found horrified him. Was dying. The planet had always been dry, but its native species had adapted over millions of years. They had built an impressive civilization based on vast underground aquifer systems that held water from ancient times when the planet had oceans. For thousands of years, those aquifers had provided enough water for everyone. The aquifers were failing. Scientists believed that geological shifts deep underground had opened new patches, allowing water to drain even deeper into the planet's core where it could not be reached. At the same time, its climate had become drier. Rainfall, never abundant, had decreased by 40% over the last 50 years. It was catastrophic. Cities that had stood for centuries were being abandoned. The population, once numbering in the billions, had dropped to less than half that. Entire regions had become uninhabitable. Those who remained crowded around the few wells that still produced water, leading to conflict and breakdown of their traditional soul structure. Reports from Galactic Council observers. They painted a grim picture. They had impressive engineering skills and sophisticated architecture, but their technology had developed differently than most spacefaring species. They had focused on working with their environment rather than against it. They had no experience with large-scale terraforming or atmospheric processing. Their drilling equipment could not reach the depths needed to access the water that had drained away. Observers predicted that civilization would collapse completely within 20 years. Some species had offered to evacuate refugees, but most refused to leave there. They would rather die on than live as refugees on alien worlds. Followed his report with Earth Diplomatic Command as soon as he returned home. He included everything about his encounter with and his research on this crisis. He recommended immediate humanitarian assistance. The response came back 3 weeks later. Request. The explanation was diplomatic. Was not a member of the Galactic Council. They had no formal relations with Earth. Providing large-scale assistance to a non-allied world could create complications with other species. Resources were limited. Earth had its own colonies and allies to support. The recommendation was to express sympathy through proper channels and nothing more. Could not accept that. He requested a meeting with his commanding officer, then his commander superior, then their superior. Each time he was told the same thing. Earth's policy was clear. They could not help every struggling civilization in the galaxy. Saved my life, Jake said during his final meeting with the deputy director. She gave me water that her own family needed. She died so I could live, and we are going to do nothing. The director looked tired. Lieutenant, I understand your feelings, but what happened to you was a personal tragedy. We cannot set foreign policy based on one individual's experience. I'm sorry about your friend, but Earth's answer is no. Left that meeting knowing his military career was probably over. He had pushed too hard and annoyed too many important people. But he could not stop. If the government would not help, maybe someone else would. Started reading out the scientists. First, he contacted researchers who specialized in terraforming and atmospheric processing. He described his problem and asked if anything could be done. Most told him the same thing the government had. Too expensive, too complicated, too risky. Found Dr. Cole. She was a hydrologist who had spent 30 years developing experimental water recovery systems. Her work had been used on several human colonies to turn marginal worlds into productive ones. When Jake explained the situation, she became interested. Problem is not just water, Dr. Cole explained during their video call. It is the whole planetary system. The water cycle is broken down. Even if you drill to the deep reserves, that is only a temporary solution. You need to restore the cycle itself, make the planet hold on to water. Can that be done? Jake asked. Cole thought for a long moment. Maybe. There is a project I have been working on with several colleagues. We call it Project Genesis. It is a combination of atmospheric seeing, biological engineering, and deep core drilling. The idea is to jumpstart a planet's water cycle even when natural conditions have broken down. We have tested parts of it, but never the whole system. Would it work on? Need to see detailed data to be sure. But based on what you have told me, yes, I think it could work. The problem is scale. We would need enormous resources, ships, equipment, personnel. It would be one of the largest terraforming operations ever. How much would it cost? Cole named a figure that made Jake's head spin. It was more money than he would earn in 10 lifetimes. More than most corporations had available for a single project. It would require government backing or something close to it. Thanked her and ended the call. He sat in his apartment feeling defeated. The government said no. The cost was impossible. What could one person do against obstacles that large? He remembered something it said through the translator. No being should die of thirst when another can prevent it. Made a decision. If the government would not listen to him, maybe they would listen to everyone. He began writing. He described his crash, his time in the desert, his encounter with. He explained what she had sacrificed and why. He included his research on dying civilization and the potential solution that could save them. And his writing to news organizations. Most ignored it, but a few picked it up. One reporter did a video interview with him. The story spread slowly at first, then fast. People began paying attention. The response was not what Jake had expected. It was bigger, much bigger. Within days of the story going public, donations started coming in. Small amounts at first from individuals who were moved by sacrifice. Then larger donations from groups and organizations. The message was simple. Humanity pays its debt. Hired military officers started a volunteer registry for people with relevant skills who wanted to help. Engineers signed up. Hydrologists, construction workers, ship pilots. Within 2 weeks, over 10,000 people had volunteered. More were joining every day. Nations began offering equipment and ships. Some did it for good publicity, others because their employees were demanding it. A major shipbuilding company announced it would donate 3 transport vessels to any organized mission to. Pressure on Earth's government grew. Representatives who had voted against helping found themselves facing angry constituents. Public opinion had shifted dramatically. What had started as one lieutenant's personal mission had become something much larger. The Earth Parliament called an emergency session. Jake was invited to testify. He stood before the assembled representatives and told his story one more time. He talked about dying in the desert and about some impossible choice. He talked about the debt that one human owed, and by extension, all humanity owed. Not know me, Jake said. She had no reason to help me except that I needed help and she could provide it. She gave away water her own family needed because she believed it was the right thing to do. She died making that choice. If we abandon her people now, what does it say about us? What does it say about humanity? It was not even close. Parliament authorized Project Genesis with full government backing. They allocated resources, ships, and personnel. The volunteer list would be used to staff the mission. Dr. Cole was named chief scientist, and Captain Leah Hayes, one of Earth's most experienced terraforming specialists, would command the operation. Received orders to join the mission as civilian liaison. His military career was not over after all. It was just beginning in a way he never expected. It was reached through Galactic Council channels. They learned that a MAV of the Genesis fleet left Earth on a cold morning in March. 12 MAV terraforming vessels led the formation, each one over 2 kilometers long and packed with equipment that represented decades of human engineering advance. Around them flew dozens of support ships, transports, and supply vessels. In total, more than 15,000 humans were making the journey. Stood on the observation deck of the command ship and watched Earth shrink behind them. Captain Lisa Hayes stood beside him, studying a field with mission details. Can thoughts? She asked without looking up. Oh, Jake said, just thinking about how this all started. One person making one choice in the desert. Nod. One choice that revealed who we want to be, that matters more than people realize. She turned off and looked at him directly. I read the full report on. She did not make it home, did she? Oh, Jake said quietly. She died 3 days short of her village, gave away too much water saving me. By the time other travelers found her, it was too late. Her family received the water shipment. Was left of it enough to keep them alive for a few more weeks. Then their well failed completely. Jake looked down at his hands. Her mother and younger brother survived by moving to a large settlement. That is where I am hiring to find them. Put a hand on his shoulder. We will find them, and we will make sure sacrifice meant something. It took 6 weeks. During that time, the crew prepared for what they would face. Dr. Cole and her team reviewed every piece of data they could find about the planet's geological structure, climate patterns, and remaining water resources. Engineers tested and retested the Genesis equipment. Medical staff prepared for the possibility of disease or medical emergencies among the population. Spent his time learning everything he could about culture and society. He worked with the linguistics team to improve translation protocols. He studied their history, their art, their philosophy. He wanted to understand the people had come. Learned impressed him. They had built a civilization that valued cooperation and resource sharing. In the harsh environment of their desert world, they had learned early that survival meant working together. They had complex soil structures designed to ensure everyone had access to water and food. Their cities were marvels of engineering, designed to collect and preserve every drop of moisture. Civilization was crumbling. The refugees who had fled to the remaining settlements had overwhelmed the soil systems. There was not enough water to maintain the old ways. Communities that had existed peacefully for centuries now fought over well access. The traditional leadership had lost authority, was not just facing environmental collapse but soil breakdown as well. The council had been watching its decline with what seemed like academic interest. Several species had offered limited aid in the form of food shipments or refugee evacuation. A few had sent scientists to study the planet's geological changes, but no one had offered real help. The general attitude seemed to be that they were facing a natural disaster beyond anyone's ability to prevent. News of the human fleet reached the council. The reaction was mixed. Some species praised Earth's humanitarian instinct. Others questioned human motives. A few expressed concern that Earth was overstepping its role in galactic affairs. Ambassador was particularly vocal. Earth claims this is pure charity, he said during a council session that was later transmitted to the fleet. But worlds are not saved without expectation of return. What will humanity demand from in payment, territory, resources, political alliance? When ambassador to the council, Daniel Foster, responded calmly. We expect nothing except the nod that we honored a debt. One saved a human life at tremendous personal cost. Humanity is simply repaying that debt on a scale appropriate to our capabilities. It's absurd, the ambassador said. You are committing enormous resource for the action of a single individual who is not even alive to appreciate it. It's precisely the point, Daniel said. We honor her memory by saving her people. Is that concept so difficult to understand? Continued, but the fleet did not slow down. When they finally arrived at, Jake felt his breath catch. The planet looked dying even from orbit. The deserts were darker than they should be, stained by exposed bedrock where sand had blown away. The polarized caps were smaller than the historical data suggested they should be. The few visible cities appeared as small spots of geometric order in a vast wilderness of nothing. Gave the order to begin orbital surveys before making surface contact. Ships spread out, scanning the planet in detail. The data confirmed what they already knew was in critical condition. The underground aquifers had less than 5 years of water left at current use rates. The atmosphere held almost no moisture. The soil in many regions had become so dry that it could no longer support even the hardy desert plants that had once grown there. Scans also showed hope. Deep beneath the surface, far below where drilling equipment could reach, vast reserves of water still existed. They were trapped in porous rock formations under layers of granite and basalt. The Genesis deep core drills could reach them. With that water brought up and the atmospheric process working to capture and recycle it, its water cycle could be restored. This established contact with what remained of the planetary government. The initial conversation was awkward. Elder, speaking for a coalition of settlement leaders, was clearly suspicious of human intentions. I've heard of your arrival, said through the translating system. This voice was deep and resonant, translated in careful English. We do not understand why you have come. Earth's far away. We have nothing you need. Step forward. Lisa had agreed to let him make first contact. We came because of, he said. She saved my life in the desert. I learned later that she died trying to get home after giving me her water. I'm Jake. I am the human she saved. There was a long silence on the other end. When spoke again, his tone had changed. You are the human from the desert, the one from the story. Jake said, gave me water when she had barely enough for herself. She told me that no being should die of thirst when another can prevent it. I cannot bring her back, but I can honor what she did. Humanity can honor it. That is why we are here. Came all this way to repay one act of kindness. Came to save your world, Jake said, because showed us what value, compassion, sacrifice, helping others even when it costs everything. Those are values we share. Those are values worth preserving. The long pause. I must speak with the other leaders, said finally. This is not what we expected. We need time to understand what you are offering and what you want in return. Want nothing in return? Lee said, stepping up beside Jake. Captain Lee Hayes, commanding the Genesis fleet. We are here to restore your planet's water cycle. All we ask is permission to land and be in work. There must be a price, said. Nothing in the galaxy is given freely, especially not on this scale. Thought of in the desert making an impossible choice. Sometimes there is no price, he said. Sometimes people just help because it is the right thing to do. Taught me that. Now we teach you that humans remember we honor our debts, and we repay kindness with kindness. Conversation ended with promising to respond within one planetary rotation. Jake and Lisa returned to the command deck to wait. Around them, the fleet held position in orbit, ready to begin work as soon as permission was granted. You think they will say yes? Jake asked. Looked at the planet below at the vast deserts and the struggling settlements. They have to. They are out of options, but I understand their suspicion. In their experience, no one helps without expecting something back. We are going to have to prove ourselves through actions, not words. Hours later, contacted them again. You may land, he said, but we will be watching carefully. If this is deception, if you try to take advantage of our weakness, you will find that still have strength enough to resist. I'm not here to take anything, Jake said. We are here to give, you will see. Landing parties went down the next day. Jake was in the lead group, along with Lisa, Dr. Cole, and a security team. They landed outside the settlement of where his family had lived. It was one of the largest surviving communities, home to nearly 30,000 clustered around 3 faying wells. It was heartbreaking. Jake saw abandoned buildings, streets covered in drifting sand, empty marketplaces that had once been centers of trade. The who came out to watch the humans land looked thin and exhausted. Many bore the marks of dehydration even though they were supposedly getting enough water to survive. Met them at the landing site. Though was elderly by their standards, his shell dulled with age, but his movement still strong. He studied the humans with his multifaceted eyes, and tiny moving in patterns Jake had learned meant careful evaluation. He said through his translator. I speak for her in the surrounding settlements. You said you came because of her family is here. They wish to meet the humans you saved. Felt his heart beat faster. I want to meet them too. I owe them an explanation. Owe them nothing, said. Made her choice freely. That is our way, but come, they are waiting. Them into the settlement, stopped to watch as they passed. Some looked curious, others suspicious, many simply confused. The group stopped at a small dwelling near the center of the community, clicked at the end. Merged. One was younger, his shell still showing the bright colors of adolescence. The other was older, a female whose shell was marked with the scars and wear of a hard life. She moved slowly, carefully, as if concerning strength. This said, indicating the older female. Smother, and this is her younger brother. Stepped forward and did his best to make the gesture of respect that he had learned. I am Jake. Your daughter saved my life. I'm sorry I could not save hers in return. He moved in a pattern that the translator rendered as deep sadness mixed with something else. Pride, maybe. Always helped others, she said, her voice soft even through the mechanical translation. Even when we had little shared, I'm glad her last act was mercy. That is how I want to remember. Something for you, Jake said. He pulled out a small crystal device from his pack. This contains recordings of final messages and everything I could find about her life. I thought you might want it. The crystal with her manipulator limbs, she held it carefully as if it were precious. Thank you, this means much. She looked up at the ships visible in the sky above. But why did you bring so many? Why did your people come here? Began at sunrise the next day. The Genesis fleet had not come just to study the problem or make promises. They had come to fix a dying world, and every hour mattered. Cole established the main operations center on the outskirts of. Within days, it had grown into a small city of prefabricated buildings, equipment yards, and command stations. Thousands of humans worked around the clock in rotating shifts. The watch at first with confusion, then with growing hope as they began to understand the scale of what was happening. Its priority was the deep core drilling operation. 6 massive drilling platforms were transported down from orbit and positioned at strategic points across the planet. Each platform stood over 100 meters tall and could drill through solid rocket depths that technology could not reach. Stood with watching the first platform begin its work. The young had attached himself to Jake in the days since their first meeting, curious about everything the humans were doing. He asked endless questions through his translator, wanting to understand not just what the equipment did, but how it worked. A bit made of advanced commodities that could handle extreme heat and pressure began spinning. It cut through the surface sand, then through layers of rock below. The sound was enormous, a deep grinding roar that echoed across the desert. Dust and debris shot up from the drill site, quickly captured by containment system. Deep will it go? Asked, his antennae twitching with excitement. 15 kilometers, Jake said. Maybe deeper if the water is lower than we think. The drill can handle up to 20 kilometers. Kilometers? Translator struggled with his tone of disbelief. That is impossible. Rock cannot be drilled that deep. Drills can, Jake said. We have been doing this for over a century. When we colonized new worlds, we often had to reach water that was buried deep. We got very good at it. Continued its work, pushing deeper hour by hour. Similar operations were starting at the other 5 sites. Together, they would reach the trapped water reserves and bring them to the surface. But drilling alone would not solve the problem. The water needed somewhere to go, and the plant needed to learn how to hold onto it. It was where the atmospheric processors came in. Lee personally oversaw their deployment. The processors were massive machines, each one the size of a large building. They were placed in strategic locations around the planet's equatorial region, where wind patterns would spread their effects most efficiently. Watch as the first processor was activated. The machine hummed to life, drawing its thin, dry atmosphere and putting it through a series of biological and chemical fillers. Inside the processor, specially engineered microorganisms worked to capture water molecules and carbon compounds. The machine was essentially teaching the atmosphere how to hold moisture again. Seeing the sky, Dr. Cole explained to a group of observers who had come to watch. These microorganisms will spread through your upper atmosphere. They will help form clouds. They will help your planet remember how to make rain. Observers clicked among themselves in their own language, clearly amazed and confused in equal measure. One of them, a scientist named, spoke through his translator. You are changing our atmosphere itself? Is that not dangerous? The thing we are introducing has been tested extensively, Dr. Cole assured him. These organisms are designed to work with existing atmospheric chemistry, not against it. They will enhance natural processes that have weakened over time. Within 6 months, you should start seeing increased cloud formation. Within a year, rainfall should begin. Fall, Repayed. We have not had significant rainfall in 3 generations. Our young ones do not even have words for it in common speech. It exists only in historical records. We'll need new words then, Dr. Cole said with a smile, because rain is coming back. Continued day after day, week after week. The drilling platforms reached their target depths. Water, trapped for millions of years in deep rock formations, began flowing up through the drill shafts. It was purified, treated, and distributed through a network of pipelines that human engineers and workers built. Restoration was important to Jake. He had insisted from the beginning that be involved in every aspect of the restoration. This was their world. They needed to understand the systems that would save it so they could maintain them after the humans left. One of the most eager students. He followed the human engineers everywhere, asking questions and taking notes. He learned how the drills worked, how the process functioned, how the pipeline systems distributed water. He was especially interested in the control systems that monitored everything. I want to learn all of this, told Jake one evening as they stood watching the sunset over a landscape that was already beginning to change. I want to understand what you have built here. Someone needs to keep it working when you're gone. Would be good at it, Jake said. You have the right kind of mind, curious, detail-oriented, not satisfied with simple answers. Like that too, said quietly. She always wanted to know how things worked. She would have loved seeing all of this. She would have asked even more questions than me. Looked at the young. Would you want to study on Earth? We have academies that teach terraforming and planetary engineering. I could help you apply. Teddy moved in a pattern Jake had learned meant surprise. You would do that? Take me to your world to learn. Sister saved my life, Jake said. The least I can do is help her brother build a future. Besides, we need people like you. People who understand both and human approach to the problems. You could become a bridge between our peoples. Quiet for a long moment. I will speak with my mother, but yes, I think would want me to do this. She always said knowledge was the most valuable thing we could possess. Months into the operation, the first signs of real change became visible. The atmospheric process had been working continuously, pumping engineered microorganisms into the upper atmosphere. The drilling platforms were bringing up millions of liters of water every day. A pipeline network stretched across thousands of kilometers. Then one morning, someone pointed at the sky and made a sound of wonder. It's real clouds, thick and gray, moving across what had been empty purple sky for generations. They spread from the equator northward, pushed by wind patterns. Within days, clouds covered nearly 20% of the planet. Acted with something close to disbelief. Work stopped in the settlements as people came out to stare at the sky. The elderly wept, remembering rain from their youth. The young ones who had never seen clouds before asked what they meant. When Jake in the operations center, is it really happening, she asked. Is our sky healing? It's happening, Jake confirmed. Those clouds will continue to spread. In a few weeks, they will start producing precipitation, light at first, then heavier as the system builds momentum. Daughter died believing there was no hope left, said softly. If she could see this, she would not believe it was real. Made it real, Jake said. Without her choice in the desert, I would not be here. None of this would be happening. Every drop of rain that falls on falls because of her. And came 2 weeks later. It started in the equatorial regions where the atmospheric processes were most concentrated. Light drizzle at first, barely enough to dampen the sand. Then heavier. Then real rain, the kind that formed puddles and soaked into the ground. It was in when the rain reached the settlement. He was working with on pipeline maintenance when he felt the first drops hit his face. He looked up at the gray clouds overhead. Around him were emerging from their buildings, antennae raised to feel the rain. who had never experienced anything like this, ran into the open, clicking with excitement. Adults stood still, as if afraid the rain would stop if they moved. The elderly sat in doorways and let the water run over their shells, washing away dust that had accumulated over years of drought. Out of her dwelling and stood in the rain beside Jake. She did not speak. She simply raised her face to the sky and let the water fall on her. Jake saw her and trembled. "You," she said finally, "thank you for giving us this." Jake said, "She started all of this." And continued for 3 days. When it finally stopped, puddles of water stood in the streets of. The sand had turned darker, holding moisture for the first time in decades. The air smelled different, cleaner somehow, full of possibilities. Work was not finished. The rain was just the beginning. Dr. Cole and her teams had moved to the next phase, biological seeing. They brought down containers filled with specially adapted plant species. Some were from Earth, modified to survive in its environment. Others were native species that had been thought extinct, their genetic material preserved in old scientific archives and regenerated using human cloning. If humans and worked together to plant these species in carefully chosen locations, the plants would spread naturally over time, creating new ecosystems that could hold water in the soil and continue the cycle of growth. Forests would grow where none had existed for thousands of years. Grasslands would cover the sand. Life would return. Galactic Council observers who had been monitoring the operation filed their reports. The tone had changed. What had started as skeptical observation had become something closer to wonder. One report, filed by a scientist, summarized the transformation. When Operation On represents the most comprehensive planetary restoration ever attempted by any species in Council history. In less than 4 months, they have reversed environmental decline that has been progressing for 50 years. More significantly, they have done this while demanding nothing in return. No territory, no resources, no political concessions. They claim to be repaying a personal debt, which seems absurd on its face, yet their actions are consistent with that. As humanity's standard response to kindness shown to them, they may prove to be the most valuable allies any species could hope for. Read that report and smiled. The Council was finally starting to understand what had taught him. Something could not be measured in resources or political advantage. Some things were simply right. Called a meeting of all the settlement leaders 4 months into the restoration. Jake and Lisa were invited to attend. They stood before an assembly from across the planet and listened as spoke. Humans have done what they promised, said. They have restored our water cycle. They have brought rain back to our world. They have given us technology to maintain these systems, and they have asked for nothing. I do not understand this, but I know we owe them a debt we cannot repay. Step forward. You owe us nothing, she said clearly. This was never about debt or payment. This was about honoring someone who showed compassion to a stranger, saved one human life. We saved one world. That feels like fair balance to us. Will you do now? Asked. Will you stay and govern what you have built? Elise said, we will stay long enough to train your people to maintain the systems. Then we will go home. This is your world. It belongs to, not to Earth. They clicked among themselves in discussion. Finally spoke again. Then we offer alliance, not as payment, but as friendship. Let Earth and be partners. Let our peoples learn from each other. This is what we can offer. Looked at Lisa, she nodded. Earth accepts, she said. Alliances equals friendship as partners. That is exactly what we hope for. He ended with formal agreement. Would petition to join the Galactic Council, and Earth would sponsor their application. More importantly, they would share knowledge and resources going forward. The relationship that began with one woman giving water to a dying human had become something larger than anyone had imagined. Jake sat within outside their dwelling. The sky above was full of clouds that promised years after the Genesis fleet arrived at. The transformation was complete. A plant that had been dying was now alive again. Lakes filled ancient basins that had been dry for generations. Rivers flowed through channels that geological surveys said had not held water in over 2,000 years. The deserts, while still present, were no longer endless waste. Vegetation spread across previously barren regions, turning orange sand into patches of green and blue. Stood at the dedication ceremony for the monument they had built in. It was massive, over 20 meters tall, carved from native stone by both human and artists working together. The sculpture showed offering a container to a human who knelt in the sand. Around the base, water flowed in channels that formed a continuous circle, representing the restored water. Inscription was written in both script and human languages. Jake had helped write it. The words were simple but powerful. One act of mercy answered by millions, one life given and paid with a world reborn, of who taught us that combatant knows no species. It had gathered for the dedication. From across the planet had traveled to witness the ceremony. Human dignitaries had come from Earth, including several parliament members and the United Earth ambassador to the Galactic Council. Representatives from other species were there too, including even the skeptical ambassador who had questioned human modes at the beginning. Lisa Hayes stood at the podium preparing to speak. The crowd quieted, waiting. Lisa looked out at the assembled masses, human and alien, and began. Years ago we came to this world carrying a debt, she said. Her voice was amplified so everyone could hear. One woman saved the life of one human man, Jake, by giving him water she desperately needed for her own family. That act of compassion cost her life. She died in the desert she was trying to cross 3 days short of. Paused, letting the word settle. When Jake told us what happened when humanity learned of sacrifice, we faced a choice. We could acknowledge the debt privately and move on with our lives, or we could do something more. We chose more. We chose to honor his memory of saving her world and her. Assured at the landscape around them, at the flowing water and growing plants. What you see here is not just technology and engineering. It is a statement of values. It is humanity saying that we remember those who help us. We honor those who sacrifice for others. We repay kindness with kindness, no matter the cost. Looked directly at En, who sat in place of honor near the monument. His family has told me that she believed people were better than they often showed. She believed in compassion and mercy even in desperate circumstances. I hope we have proven her right. I hope the world restored to life stands as evidence that her faith in others was justified. Crowd erupted in sound. Humans applaud, clicked their mandibles in their traditional expression of strong approval. The noise continued for several minutes before Leah could speak again. We officially transfer all Genesis systems to control, she said. The atmospheric processors, the drilling platforms, the pipeline networks, all of it now belongs to. We have trained thousands of your people to operate and maintain these systems. This is your world. These are your tools. Use them well. Moved to the podium as Lee stepped back. The old had been transformed by the restoration. He stood now, his movements more energetic. Hope had a physical effect on people, Jake had learned. It made them stronger. Old began. I remember when was green, when rain fell regularly, when our children played in streams that ran through every settlement. Then I watched as our world died slowly but inevitably. I believed I would die on a dead planet and my people would follow me into extinction. Earned to faith the monument of. This young woman who I knew as a child changed everything, not through her death but through her choice while living. She chose mercy. She chose compassion, and somehow impossibly that choice reached across space to touch an entire species. The humans heard her message in it. The crowd again. I do not fully understand humans yet. They are strange to us in many ways, but I know this, they are people of honor. They pay their debts. They value life, including lives that are not their own species. These are qualities we have always admired. These are qualities that saved. Assured at the human delegation. Today, formally petitioned to join the Galactic Council as a member world. We do so with Earth as our sponsor and ally. We do so because we have learned that the galaxy is larger than we knew and that there are peoples in it worth knowing, worth trusting, worth calling friends. Ceremony continued for hours. Speakers from various groups shared their thoughts. Scientists discussed the technical achievements. Cultural representatives talked about the cooperation between species. Artists performed works they had created to commemorate the restoration. The most moving moment came when approached the podium. The elderly moved slowly, aided by. She stood before the crowd and was silent for a long moment, as if gathering her thoughts. "Daughter is gone," she said finally, her voice soft but clear through the translators. "I cannot bring her back, but I can see what her choice created. I can see this restored world. I can see the friendship between our peoples. I can see hope where there was none." Turned to look at Jake, who stood with the human delegation. "Jake, you came to me carrying guilt because you survived and my daughter did not. I tell you now, let go of that guilt. Made her choice freely. She would be happy knowing it led to all of this. She would be proud." Then continued. "To all humans I say this, you have given us back our future. Our children will grow up on a living world because of you. We will never forget. We will tell the story of and the humans who entered her sacrifice for as long as our species exists." Stepped away from the podium and moved to the monument. She placed her manipulator limbs on the stone carving of her daughter, tying it gently. The gesture was universal, grief and love expressed without words. The ceremony ended, Jake found himself walking through with. The young was preparing to leave for Earth in 2 weeks. He had been accepted to the Terraforming Academy with a full scholarship, just as Jake had promised. His bags were already packed. His mother had given her blessing, though Jake knew it was hard for her to let her only remaining child travel so far away. At a small park that had been created in what was once an abandoned section of the settlement. Water flowed through artificial streams. Native plants grew alongside Earth species that had been adapted to the environment. Children of both species played together, splashing in the shallow water. "Nervous about leaving," admitted. "Everything I know is here. Everyone I care about is here." "It's normal," Jake said. "But you will make new friends. You will learn things that will help your people, and you will come back. This will always be your home." Until he moved thoughtfully. "Would have wanted to see Earth. She always wondered what other worlds were like. In a way, I will be going for both of us." "Would be proud of you," Jake said. "Just like your mother is proud, just like I am proud, you are going to do great things." Sat in silence for a while, watching the children play. Finally spoke again. "What will you do now? Will you return to Earth?" "Actually," Jake said, "but I have been asked to help establish a permanent human embassy here. Someone needs to maintain the relationship between our worlds. I think I want to be that person." Because of, Jake said, "I have come to care about this place and its people. I want to see what happens next. I want to be part of the friendship we are building." So its restoration spread across the galaxy. The Galactic Council formally accepted as a member world, sponsored by Earth had promised. The story of and the human response became widely known. Some species found it inspiring. Others remained skeptical, convinced there must be hidden modes they could not see. But things began to change. 3 minor border conflicts were resolved when species involved invoked what became known as choice. They chose cooperation over conflict, mercy over revenge, compassion over calculation. The example of one woman and one human man had created a new standard for civilized behavior. Like facing water shortage, reached out to Earth for help. The Genesis fleet, which had been preparing to disband, was redirected to assist. A team of human and engineers worked together on the project, turning it into a joint humanitarian mission. It was the first of many such collaborations. Earth schools began teaching about as an example of humanity at its best. Children learned about sacrifice and the importance of honoring debts and showing compassion to strangers. The story became part of human culture, a reminder of the values they wanted to embody as a species. Cole received the Nobel Prize for her work developing the Genesis systems. In her acceptance speech, she said, "I provided the technology, but I was not the reason was saved. That credit belongs to who showed one human what compassion truly means, and to all the humans who decide that our sacrifice deserve an end. Science can solve many problems, but it takes moral courage to decide what problems are worth solving." Lisa Hayes was promoted to admiral and given command of a new humanitarian fleet dedicated to helping struggling worlds. The mission statement was simple. "We help because we can. We honor those who show us mercy. We pay our debts." Stood in his new embassy office in one morning and watched the rain fall outside. It was the rain seen now, concept that had not existed on for 3 generations. The rain fell steady and life-giving, soaking into soil that had learned to hold moisture again. What about the day he crashed in the desert? About dying of thirst under twin suns? About appearing like a miracle, offering water from her last container? About her saying that no being should die of thirst when another can prevent it? Choice, one moment of compassion. That was all it took to change everything. Communication device chimed, a message from on Earth. The young had just completed his first semester at the academy. He was doing well. He had made friends. He was learning to terraform worlds just like the humans had terraformed his. Message ended with a simple statement. "I told my classmates about today, about what she did and what it meant. They understand now why we do this work, why we help others, because someone showed us the way." Smiled and looked out at the rain again. Somewhere in the galaxy, other species were watching humanity with new eyes. They were learning that humans remembered kindness, that humans honored their debts, that humans would travel across space and commit enormous resources to repay a single act of compassion. Galactic Council had called it unprecedented, anthropologists called it culturally significant. Diplomats called it a new era of cooperation. Called it simple, one person helped another, and that other person never forgot. It continued to fall on, washing away the dust of dying years, and nourishing the seeds of a future that should not have existed. In every drop of that rain, in every stream that flowed, in every lake that filled, there was a reminder. Given her last drop to save one human, humanity had repaid her world with life. The story would never be forgotten. More rain tomorrow. In the distance, they could hear the sound of water running through the new pipeline system. "Be happy," said. "She always believed the best of people. She would be glad to know she was right." "It was right," Jake said, "about everything." This choice revealed something to us, Jake said. "It showed us what real compassion looks like, what real sacrifice means. We could not let her people die when we had the ability to save them. Her death would mean nothing if we did not act." For the first time, his voice was younger, less worn by life. "You truly came to help us, not to conquer or take our world." "Came to save your world," Lee said, "and then we will leave it in your hands. This is your home. We are just here to make sure it survives." Then he moved again in that pattern Jake could not fully read. "I think would have liked that," she said softly. "She always believed people were better than they showed. Maybe she was right." Looked at the dying settlement around them, then up at the fleet waiting in orbit. "We will prove she was right," he said, "starting today." The fleet was coming to their world, not to conquer, not to exploit, but to help. They did not understand why. Such things did not happen in their experience of galactic civilization. Understood? He had experienced command firsthand. Now humanity would show what human gratitude looked like when given form and purpose. It would launch in 3 months. 12 Genesis-class terraforming vessels, the most advanced of their kind. Support ships, transport vessels, thousands of volunteers, all heading to a world most humans had never heard of to save a people they had never met. Because one woman had given water to a dying human and taught humanity what true compassion meant. Still traveled toward home with a cargo sled that was no longer full enough to save everyone waiting there. Did not know it yet, but he would never forget this night, and neither would humanity.